sometimes. I don't exactly try to put any mustard on it. I just sort of, wah, 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 wah. Let's just do a whole thing. Count on many blessings. Overdoing it's even better. But anyway, those kinds of things that they do make it harder, and they're things that you become attached to. There's something very that rhythm and something kind of nice about what she was doing there. I don't remember all the words. It was he is my rock. He is the man that keeps me on top. That would have meant something else to me. Here is the church. Here is the steeple. Open the door. See all the people. No, this one was it? Or was it? No, maybe it was. Anyway, moving on to some of the stuff of hers that I'm not so in favor of. It's going to get a little bit worse, then it's going to get a lot worse.
I'm a Christian and I welcome the LGBT because who am I to judge someone who's a human being like me?
What a great start, right? Like that's couldn't go wrong now. She's not going to judge people who are LGBT. And then she ruins it.
Sins are equals what church taught me, so you can't be a Christian and hate sinners. That's hypocrisy. Agreeing with it and loving them are two different things, so I gladly give them the love that I receive from the King.
Okay, this is the apologetics and people trying to feel better about the hateful things in their religion that many, many religious people, including myself in the past, undoubtedly, I did this exact same thing. This is a way that people put a smile on hatred. So let me be extremely clear to you, Atika. Atika, who I like. Atika, I do like you. I'm not just saying that for the sake of building credibility, but the thing you need to understand is that this concept of loving the sinner but hating the sin is still hating the sinner, because you're not talking about something like, hey, that person stole something, I'm still gonna forgive them, it's fine, I get it, they did that, maybe they did that to me, I then can forgive them, you can decide God can forgive them too. We're not talking about that thing that you and I both agree is immoral. You thinking that you're basing that on biblical precepts, but the fact of the matter is you're not. You actually hold that belief that is wrong because of modern society, and that's how our society works. However, you as a person anyway, we could argue about where society got that from. But you are talking about identity. You are talking about something that a person was born with. And it's so sad to see from someone who should be able to understand. You who is a person of color who can read throughout history the number of times people have said your mere existence and identity is disgusting or sinful. I come from Mormonism. That was certainly the case. In 1978, God changed his mind about black people. That was not a very good reenactment of the song, but this is no different. You would not accept that coming from another person saying, listen, I love you, I just hate your dark skin. You are talking about a person's identity and something that is true to them at their core. And while I am sure that as a practical matter, the way you day-to-day treat these people is likely with kindness, with the same kind of kindness you seem to exude here on your TikTok channel. When you advocate for these things, you are advocating for the thought processes, for the things that are in these children's mind who are killing themselves at ridiculous rates, who are going to church knowing about themselves that they are gay or trans or whatever, and that is incompatible with these things that their parents or their family or just however they ended up at that church, that they want to get the approval of this God, of this sky daddy, and this person through these other people have laid down that something that is core to them is wrong, is an abomination, to use the words from the book you subscribe to. And then comes the self-loathing, because when you say hate the sin, that's the right way, they go after that too. They go, this part of me is a sin and I hate it. And that turns into hating yourself. There will undoubtedly be people who see that I am reviewing your channel and think, why would he go after her? Why? What could he possibly have to say? She's so nice. She advocates for love. And I wish you were. And a lot of your stuff is mild because Christianity isn't true. I wouldn't say that it's fine, but it's fine. But this is not. This is evil. This is wrong. This is advocating for hate, but trying to paint a heart on it. When you say, I love the sinner, I just hate their sin, I can't hate them themselves because that would be hypocrisy because I have sinned. You are saying that these things you do that are wrong or immoral or these times you have sinned, that is the same of these people who were born set to love who they're going to love, set to be attracted who they're going to be attracted to. So once again, Atika, I dare say I do like you. I've scrolled through a few of your videos now. You are enjoyable to listen to. Your tone, your cadence, even your voice. I like most things about you. This isn't one of those hate atheists, oh, look how cringy this is. Sure, I do those videos from time to time. This is actually me, one person with a platform. Granted, it's smaller than yours. It actually wasn't when I first saw this account, but now it is. She's blowing up from one person with a platform to another person with a platform. This specific thing, and there might be more. I will probably scroll through your TikTok more. I'm not interested in making a bunch of videos unless you really turn to the complete and total dark side. On this specific thing, I very much hope you will reevaluate what you've said, and I hope you will go into your book and do the apologetics. I hope you'll go over to Digital Hammurabi's channel and watch the video that actually demonstrates that the original context of the Old Testament actually, in many scenarios, condoned. It didn't condemn homosexuality. I suffer no delusions that this video is going to take you out of Christianity completely, but I do hope you will stop using phrases like this, referring to gay people just being themselves, being the selves they were born as, and still telling them that they are sinners, because sin is another really disgusting concept to come out of religion. Sin is not the concept of morality. Morality is what we as a society have come to the conclusions that we cannot abide each other doing or that we like each other doing. There's often a lot of incredible nuance and we work through those things. Sin is this concept that there is an individual somewhere and he's decided what is wrong, whether or not it is justifiable or not, and people should live according to that word regardless of whether or not it goes against their very nature, even if that nature does not harm other people. Please, Atika, reevaluate. And if you'd like to have a discussion, reach out to me. My email is dearmratheist@gmail.com, and we can have a totally non-hostile conversation. Just because you and I disagree at our cores on some major issues doesn't mean we can't find some common ground and perhaps, I dare say, learn from each other. That is where I am going to leave it, and that is where this set is going to leave it. I don't suppose you will see this set again on an episode of Dear Mr. Atheist. It'll still be on my live shows this weekend, and it will appear on the episode of Objectively Dan, which I am appearing on today. By the time this comes out, probably in an hour or two. But if you don't watch live shows, say Auf Wiedersehen to this set. We are moving everything to that new studio. Holy moly, it's been a ton of work. It is also extremely expensive. So, as always, if you want to support the channel, number one way to do it right now is the Amazon wishlist, which is all studio stuff helping us get built up. Otherwise, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Dear Mr. Atheist, Reddit r/Dear Mr. Atheist. That's where you can suggest things like today's topic, which was suggested. Again, I think the user was called If K-Pop Was Punk. And a special thank you, as always, to my wonderful patrons. Without them, there would likely be no us. Here's some video suggestions if you want to support the channel by staying a while. And a special thank you to my patron of the day, Danielle Cavoto. With love to all of you, including you, Atika. I've been Jimmy Snow. Mr. Atheist was not my father.
Wow. Getting right, dude. Wrecked in the buttocks. The buttocks. Okay, what do I need? Sword. More AP. So big boy sword or big boy wand? Why are you fuck nuggets attacking? Fuck the AI. Idiot. Why are you attacking the assassin? Oh my god. And of course my ult doesn't do anything. How did that Nautilus ult do nothing? Where did that shield come from? What? I've never seen that shield before. I'm confused. Oh god, that. Come on, really? What was that? Oh no. Go to the wrong item.
cleanses the world.
What? Holy shit. just wasted 60 gold for one fucking brand. Good job, RNG. I should have... Oh no, I actually don't need him anymore. I don't have the money. Fucking level 7. Oh. This game started perfect and then it just got worse, like a little bit worse, and then was absolute horseshit for the rest of the game. Fucking RNG bullshit.
Girl Defined is deleting videos. Donald Trump is still being Donald Trump. And I try a bidet for the first time. We will cover these stories and more. I'm Jimmy Snow, I'm Mr. Atheist, and this is what's on my radar. Welcome to a new thing we're going to try out on Fridays. This is something I used to kind of do in my live shows and something I really like to do, but I'll keep these episodes short, usually 15 to 20 minutes, and cover things that are happening. A little bit of atheism, a little bit of world events, and a little bit of my life. Without further delay, let's dive on in. Last weekend, during one of my live streams, I pulled up Social Blade, and I went specifically to Girl Defined's Social Blade page. And I noticed something while I was there. I noticed this. On the 21st of February on Social Blade, it looks as though they got somehow negative 2,439,938 views. Now, if you are familiar at all with the way that Social Blade works, basically, whenever you unlist or delete a video, Social Blade counts that as a negative view because they don't have a way to count otherwise. Then, I think it was the next day, they put out a video trying to explain why. Let me show you a piece of that video.
Hey guys, it's Kristen and Bethany here, and over the past few months, we've been thinking a lot about our channel and just really thinking about the style, the way we present, the content, and just the overall purpose of our entire YouTube channel.
That is certainly something YouTubers do. I can confirm that I do that. I'm trying out a new kind of style show just for Fridays right now to see how you like it, and would love lots of feedback in the comments. But they go on to actually give an explanation for why, and I'd like to show you some of my doubts on that why.
And as we've been evaluating our channel and really just taking a step back and asking ourselves like, okay, is this exactly what we want? And also taking into account some of the really helpful constructive criticism that a lot of you have given us. We've actually taken that into account. And
I don't think they're talking about my criticism here.
as we move forward with these changes, the content of our channel will still be coming from a Christian worldview and will be specifically targeted toward Christian women. However, we want you to know that regardless of your religious background, everyone is welcome here.
Well, thank you, because I will be watching, but let's get to Bethany's explanation of why they've deleted videos.
Now, regarding the changes to the channel, if you are a content creator, you know what it's like to look back on some of your earliest work and really see how far you've come. That's exactly what it's like for the two of us. We've grown a lot since those early days, and we hope to continue growing and improving on the quality. Thanks, guys.
So there it seems like they are simply saying that they decided to get rid of some of the older stuff, some of the stuff that maybe doesn't represent them now anymore. But I want to actually take a moment, take a look at this. Let's pull up the actual Girl Defined channel, and if we go to their videos, now we're sorted by videos so it shows when it came out. And if you go back a ways, it still has stuff going back pretty well to the same. In other words, the videos that they deleted were in these date ranges. I mean, we're back all the way to 2 years and even 3 and 4 years with some of the stuff. So it clearly isn't just production and age. And I want to say thank you to Dirty Heathen, who over on Reddit sent me some information that is helpful in this case. Some of the videos that were deleted were actually their most popular videos, and they included how to wear makeup in a God-honoring way, one that I was totally planning to cover at some point. That is unfortunate that I didn't get to. Also, 6 guys that you shouldn't date, court, or marry, the one about Mr. Struggle. I did actually cover that video already. 4 lies our raunch culture is feeding you. I also covered that one. And 8 reasons we aren't feminist, another one that I covered, but that one was during a live show. And here's the thing, all of those videos are quite polarizing. So whatever the reason is, and we're going to talk about one more thing here in a moment about something that's a little bit revealing into the actual motive for deleting their videos. So first of all, just be honest about it, but whatever the reason is, if your views have actually changed, because these are such polarizing topics and you had such heavy, I guess is the word, opinions on these matters, if your opinions have changed or not, it is up to you to clarify whether or not that is the case. Just as you've tried to delete some old embarrassing blogs where you attack LGBT people, ones that we dug up and read on here, because you have not answered for those terrible things and the ways you have influenced a lot of people with those views. So if your views are the same after deleting these, after deleting the vlogs, after deleting the blogs, you need to answer for that. Now, here was another thing that Dirty Heathen sent me. This was back from December and something that kind of showed that this was coming. And it is a post over on their Facebook page where they lament that there is a video with nearly 6 million views of theirs, only it was over on another channel. Unfortunately, this highly viewed video was created by another YouTube channel to mock the Christian beliefs of Girl Defined. By the way, I haven't actually checked out that channel personally. I don't know what the views are. Nothing against the channel, I just haven't checked it out yet. However, I don't trust that Girl Defined would actually find a distinction between criticism and mockery. Certainly, I get very upset with them, and some of their views deserve to be mocked. But as far as the Christian worldview goes, on this channel at least, we are very critical of those views and put those under a microscope. Also on here, as hard as it is to be the recipients of such blatant ridicule, we know the battle isn't actually against us. The real fight is a spiritual one. It's a fight for God's truth and the gospel of Jesus Christ. No, it actually isn't. It is not about a fight against God. It is not, you aren't doing some big heavenly thing because, well, this is Mr. Atheist channel. I'm not trying to attack a God that I actually believe exists. I am most interested in truth, whatever that truth is. And it has become very apparent that that thing that you believe is the truth not only isn't, but is extremely harmful, especially to the people that you are targeting and helping. In this post, they actually request $20,000 to help with their ministry. Our year-end financial need is $20,000. They had talked about this over on Instagram. I believe that is mostly to travel. Notably no, and this is the last part of this story we will cover, they do now have a new set, and let me show you.
Longing for
something, like just longing for hope, longing to get to a place where I could be totally content with who God made me to be. And so
Now that donation link is still open. They are still taking money from people, and now they have this new set. I don't know if any of the money went to the new set. It looks like it's something just in their home, so probably didn't. However, I assume they did get new sound equipment, because now it doesn't appear that the microphone is just on a table right in front of them that gets bumped 100 times. I bump my microphone plenty, so I won't be too critical about that. But I will assure you that we are going to continue to watch this channel, and as damaging things come out, we will cover those things. But specifically, Kristen and Bethany, if you watch, and I suspect you do, those things you deleted where you gave polarizing views, those have affected people. And while you've deleted the vlogs, you've deleted the blogs, you have not deleted the beliefs that you have affirmed in people and made them feel confident in that are negative beliefs, in my opinion. So if you stand by those polarized opinions, or if your opinions have changed, it is your responsibility to make a video and cover those topics and cover what has changed about it. Or just say we still believe that, but try and stick by this whole we just looked so silly because it was our early days, which seems to definitely not be why you deleted them. I did notice you kept up Bethany's list for a good Christian husband. I think it's that. Thanks for keeping that one up. I believe that is an instance where my video got more views than yours did, so thank you. Final thing on Girl Defined, I am still behind them by about 6,000 subscribers. Next Tuesday is my birthday, and if you want to give me the best birthday present, hit that subscribe button and help me beat Girl Defined in subscribers by my birthday. I don't know why that's what I want for my birthday, but it's what I want. Moving on to other topics. Another thing that was brought to my attention on Reddit today is self-harm/self-injury awareness day. Self-harm is actually something that affected me in my life, especially during my religious years. I would like to encourage anyone who's watching to today do some research on how to talk to a person, how to be supportive when you find out they are self-harming. And I'd also like to let you all know that this is something that is extremely, extremely common. You would be surprised if you yourself have not self-harmed, or perhaps even if you have, that this is something that a lot of people do, a lot of people experience, and a lot of people fight with. And spreading awareness and having conversations when people are comfortable having those conversations can be extremely helpful and can lead to better treatment, better therapy, and taking this stigma away that prevents people from going and getting therapy in the first place. On to some politics and some world news. I assure you that in the future, when possible, we will avoid talking about Trump as much as we can. But today is not that day. Some of the bigger news that you've already no doubt heard a lot about, so we're not really going to cover. The whole Cohen testimony and implicating Trump in a number of crimes. That's already been overcovered by every outlet. Undoubtedly, if you're interested in that kind of thing, you already know as much about it as you want to know about it. The thing I want to talk about is this summit between Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump. Now, to Trump's credit, he did end the summit early when Kim had an unreasonable level of demands and wanted removal of sanctions in return, despite the fact that they are perhaps the #1 worst humanitarian nightmare in the world, and doesn't at least seem to care much about that. So there's the to his credit out of the way. Now, here's the thing that was disgusting to me. In 2016, North Korea held a student by the name of Otto Warmbier, hopefully this isn't the first time you've heard his name, and made him do this big lavish public apology for allegedly trying to take down or steal a poster. And they sentenced him to 15 months of hard labor. During this time, it would seem that he was actually tortured. And when he was finally returned to the United States in 2017, he was already all but dead. He had severe brain damage, he was blind, and he was deaf. And beyond this being the fault of North Korea, it is the fault of Kim Jong-un. Nothing happens, especially at the higher levels of that country, and especially things that would affect diplomatic relations, without his knowledge, without his interaction. He is there as the total king, the total dictator of this place. And the disgusting thing that happened was Donald Trump has once again decided to take the word of a dictator over the word of his own intelligence community. Here's the thing he said. He tells me that he didn't know about it, and I will take him at his word. He also says that he felt very badly and that he knew the case well, but that it wasn't until later that he knew the case, after the fact. The president would have been better saying absolutely nothing at all in regards to the story. This is an indefensible statement, and it should be one of the statements where the people on the right are willing to line up to criticize the president for it. And yet, with very few exceptions, they have stayed silent. If outlets on the right things like Fox News want it to be believed that the left are way too overly critical of the president, then they cannot meet things like this with silence when it is so clear what the president said was abhorrent and needs to be criticized. Okay, no more Trump for today. Before we get to the dessert, as I promised, it's a video of me trying a bidet. It's of my face, trying a bidet for the first time. Just a few other notable stories that were on my radar this week. We'll just go through these quickly. First of all, YouTube is cracking down on child predators on the platform, as it was discovered there is this algorithmic hole that actually helps them find the kind of content that they are attracted to, and that they are using abusive language, putting abusive comments down. YouTube is fixing all of that after it was exposed by a channel that, the funny thing is, the channel itself has some problems too. I actually do want to take a moment to, I'm not actually going to link you to the videos, I'm not going to link you to that channel, but one thing that I found extremely problematic about the way it was exposed, this individual actually took you through the ways this algorithmic hole works. And I don't just mean like by the outside, but actually went down the hole himself, went to the timestamps predators were putting in the comments, showed you keywords that worked. It is the kind of thing that would have been good for YouTube to know so they can fix it, but I also now worry about how useful it may have been to predators in trying to find these algorithmic holes on this platform and other platforms. Additionally, the person exposing it continued to do this. He did more and more live streams, showing more terms, showing more ways these things can work, showing more timestamps, and there are other things about his history on the platform and things he's done that makes me think that this was, in fact, for him, a publicity stunt and a desire to start Adpocalypse 2.0, and much less about the actual problem here. But a lot of creators, including myself, have spoken to their YouTube contacts, and rest assured this is something being taken very seriously, and they are looking to fix the problem. We also learned this week that TikTok has been illegally collecting the data of children. I don't use the TikTok app myself, but if you are a parent, this may be a story worth looking into for you. In tech news, Samsung announced a nearly $2,000 foldable smartphone where it's a tablet when it's folded out and a regular phone on the outside. It's on my radar because I think it's absurd and silly. I actually think it's going to lead to really cool things down the road, but I really doubt the first gen is going to be worth it for anybody. I am a Poké nerd, so in entertainment news, Pokemon has announced a new set of games, Pokemon Sword and Pokemon Shield, that will bring its main franchise to the Switch. I have not picked a starter yet. And finally, also on my radar, Tesla announced a price reduction for their Model 3, now starting at $35,000, and promises self-driving this year. Self-driving and the ethics and the things you have to program in will be a topic we will talk more about in the future, but honest to goodness, I am so excited for self-driving technology. Those are the things on my radar this week, and we end out with this. I want to say a thank you to whoever went to my Amazon wish list. I kind of put it on there as a joke, but like a hopeful joke, but somebody bought me a bidet, and I did promise that if that happened, I would post a video on Instagram, which I have, but I will do here too, of my face as I tried the bidet for the first time. Here is a piece of that. If you want to see the longer video, go check it out on Instagram. And now enjoy as I try it for the very first time.
Oh no.
Here we go. Oh. Oh. I have not been living my life correctly up until this exact moment. That's quite high pressure. It's like it feels how I thought it was going to feel, but at the same time, it's a new experience. My goodness. What have I been doing with my life up until now? Up until this moment. Don't forget that this coming Tuesday, we have a charity stream raising money for children with cancer and their families. A link to donate before the stream starts can be found below. Please do consider donating. If that number hits $5,000 before we start the stream on Tuesday, I will begin that stream by donating $500. That stream will have lots of amazing things, including a discussion debate with Kwaku of the Three Mormons, and myself trying sushi for the very first time. So please consider donating today and coming to that stream on Tuesday. Don't forget to help me beat Girl Defined by hitting that subscribe button, hit the like button, and share this video. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Dear Mr. Atheist, Reddit r/Dear Mr. Atheist. And as always, here are my patrons who are so wonderful and amazing and keep the show going and allow me to try out new things like this. A special thank you to my orbital teapots, Carissa, Mia, Commander Bork, Maya, Allison, and Caleb. You can also support the channel by clicking one of these video suggestions and sticking around for a while. Today's patron of the day is Leah Lazinski. With love, I've been Jimmy Snow. Mr. Atheist wasn't my father.
Peppers. Peppers. What?
Well, hi there. I'm here today with one of the coolest animals I've ever interacted with, and that is Archimedes, the western screech owl. Because we want to talk to you about owls. Archimedes comes to us from Utah's Reptile Adventures, which that might seem funny because this is a bird, but if you're not a long-term follower of our channel, then I have terrible news to break to you, which is that birds are reptiles. As it turns out, crocodiles are more closely related to birds than they are to lizards and snakes. Birds are the direct descendants of the dinosaurs. So birds are very literally living dinosaurs, and that is stinking rad. And when it comes to owls, owls are one of the coolest of all the living dinosaurs. I mean, these are among the few living dinosaurs that don't embarrass the extinct dinosaurs like Tyrannosaurus Rex. I have so many things I want to share with you about owls. One thing that a lot of people are aware of, and you'll probably see a few times as we film, that Archimedes here will flap his wings and you won't hear a sound. And that's because owls are silent flyers. They're nocturnal animals, which means they're moving around in the dark. And hearing for nocturnal animals is one of the most important senses. And we'll talk about owl hearing in a minute because it's amazing. But yeah, I'm talking about you. But they fly in total silence, which allows them both to sneak up on their prey and to still hear their prey clearly while they're flying. One of the things that you know about owls is that they can turn their heads a long way. And this is true. They can't spin it all the way around. That's actually a misconception. But they can turn their heads much farther than most animals. And there's a very funny reason for this. The reason is that their eyes are too big. Owls, even though they are primarily going to be hunting by sound, which we'll talk about again here in just a moment, they're still somewhat visual predators, and seeing in low light is difficult. Birds across the board have large eyes, and nocturnal animals tend to have larger eyes than diurnal animals. Well, owls have absolutely colossal eyes. You can't tell how large their eyes are because, for one thing, you can't see how big their head is because it's covered in feathers, so it looks much larger than it actually is. Showing off their cool head spinning ability right now. Archimedes, are you trained for this? You're so cool. You're so cool. Those eyelids. I love this thing. The eyes are so big in the head of an owl that there is no space and no weight accommodations, because when you fly, having a huge amount of weight at the front of your head, that throws off everything as far as being able to fly. That's actually a lot of the reason that birds have beaks instead of toothy jaws, is because beaks are a lot lighter. And so taking weight off of your head is very advantageous when it comes to flight. Their eyes are so large that they can't have muscles big enough to move those eyeballs, and so owls are always staring straight ahead. They cannot turn their eyes at all. In cartoons and stuff, you'll see them look around. They cannot do this. And the only way for them to be able to see what's behind them, like if you wanted to see what's behind you, you just turn your head as far as it'll go and then you rotate your eyes. Well, an owl can't do that, so it needs to be able to turn its whole head. And that's also why they're doing funny little gyrations with their head all the time, is because they can't just move their eyes and make subtle adjustments. They gotta make whole head adjustments anytime they want to see from a slightly different angle than before. And that is so awesome. I told you they had cool ears, and owl ears are one of my favorite things to share with people. When you listen, you could be in a room and you could be blindfolded, and somebody could be making a sound, and you could pretty well pinpoint exactly where they are. And the reason that you can do this is because you have two ears. And what you're doing is you're triangulating, which is just that the sound that leaves an object, if it's, say, off to one side of you, it's going to hit this ear just slightly before it hits this ear. And even though you would have difficulty doing the math, your brain is very good at computing exactly what that difference is and figuring out exactly where that source of sound came from. And this works very well on a two-dimensional plane, which is really the only one that matters
Oh
very
my
much
god,
for you.
game.
But for an owl,
Get your
it's a
RNG
whole other world because
right,
they fly.
for fuck's
So
sake.
they live not only in a left to right world, but also an up-down world. And they've got 2 ears, just like you, so they can hear if it's coming from this side or this side just fine. But up and down gets funny, because it'll still, if it's above you, it'll hit both ears at about the same time, except owl ears are weird. They have asymmetrical ears. They have one ear that points up and one ear that points down. And because of this, they can triangulate not only left and right, but also up and down in a three-dimensional space. And that's stinking rad. So, I don't think that there's any question that owls
I lost again.
are awesome. They're awesome.
Fuck this.
But a big question is, are they good pets? I mean, Harry Potter's got one. Is an owl the right pet reptile for you? And yeah, you heard me right about that. We actually have a whole video on this. I told you a little bit about it already, but if you want to understand what I'm talking about when I say that the owl is a pet reptile, make sure to check out that video right there. And we're going to look at owls generally because I'm not sure how many owls we're realistically ever going to have on this channel. So we're going to talk about owls as a group and not just the western screech owl like this one. The specific owls available to you will largely be regionally determined. But there are some overarching similarities. And so when we make this score, it is talking about owls across the board. Owl of them. We're going to break down owls into our 5 categories, which are handleability, care, hardiness, availability, and upfront costs. Let's start with handleability. We give owls an overall score of 3 out of 5 for handleability. And actually, one thing I want to start with when it comes to handling an owl or really any flighted bird is that they're unreasonably light. When you're talking about some of the bigger owls, I mean, you're going to be able to feel it. But this owl, which is a western screech owl, honestly, I'm not sure that this would feel very different if I were just wearing the glove. Birds, until you've handled a flighted bird, you just can't even fathom how just unreasonably light they are. And part of that is due to their hollow bones and their other weight-reducing structures like a beak. Part of it also is the fact that they're heavily feathered, and so when you see a bird without feathers, you realize that they're nowhere near as big as they appear to be. And and like earlier on, we were talking about how far they can turn their neck, which is absolutely baffling because it looks like they've got no neck at all. But when you see birds without feathers, they've actually got huge, long, giant necks, and so it's not quite as shocking that they can turn it that far. But they are really amazing to handle. It's quite an experience, and I definitely recommend at some point in your life that you handle a flighted bird, even if you decide that a flighted bird isn't the right pet for you. When it comes to owls, specifically, if they're imprinted on you as a baby,
you, game.
They can
Oh my god,
be
this makes
pretty
me
good when it comes
really
to
mad.
handling. That doesn't mean that you're going to snuggle with an owl. I want to make this very clear. The owl is going to stand on your hand, and you darn well better have some sort of heavy leather glove on. It is possible in some instances to handle them without it, and as long as everything goes fine, great. I mean, sort of like you can handle a cobra as long as nothing goes wrong.
Cobra.
But if they decide that, I think I'm just going to hold on a little bit tighter today, it's going to be an awful day. Not as bad as the day can go with the cobra, but still a very unpleasant day. Generally speaking, though, owls aren't really very handleable for anything beyond what you see me doing right now. I mean, you can carry them around, you can show them off. They'll perch, they'll poop, which is something that birds generally do all the time. Something I love about reptiles is reptiles tend to poop about 1 time for every time they eat. And so for snakes, that might be just like once a week, once every other week that they poop. That's great when you're handling them, unless it's something like an indigo snake, which poops all the time. Lizards poop about once a day, which stinks compared to, most snakes. Birds, though, they're pooping like every few minutes. So if you're going to handle a bird for any length of time, expect a turd. And we'll take care of that right now. after a little while, they're going to have had enough of standing there, and they'll let you know by trying to fly away. And, they've done this before. A well-trained bird will be able to get itself righted again. In this case, fortunately for him, we had a table he could just sit on. But they will only sit on your hand for so long before they decide to test their ability to get away. When it comes to care, this is where things start to fall apart for owning an owl. We give owls an overall score of 1 out of 5 for care, because it sucks. Let's start with the enclosure. The size of the enclosure that you're going to need is going to vary dramatically based on the size of the owl that you have. For some very small owls, like this screech owl, you're going to need an enclosure that's probably kind of similar to what you might need for a tegu, just taller. But when it comes to the larger owl species, they're going to need a room in your house like some of the giant monitors. Except it can be outdoors, so you basically need to build a shed for them. I said they can be housed outdoors, and that is true throughout the range of most of the birds that we're talking about. So if it's an owl that's native to your area, it can probably live outdoors in your area year-round. And that is one of the really cool things about endothermic organisms that is not true about reptiles. Most reptiles, especially exotic reptiles, can't be housed outdoors in most places. And birds, not necessarily tropical birds, but native owl species oftentimes can, and that's pretty cool. That's really the only upside to endotherms, though. Otherwise, it's just all terrible. One thing to keep in mind when you have an owl is that for about an hour a day, you're going to need to let it outside of its typical enclosure to just hang out outdoors. And especially if you've got a small owl, you're going to need to supervise it for that whole time, because other birds, even other predatory birds, are going to harass it, might eat it. You don't want to come out and just find your perch. That's terribly disappointing. They also need to be fed daily, and when we're talking about smaller owls like this, it's actually going to be multiple times daily. Smaller endothermic organisms tend to burn through energy even faster than larger endothermic organisms. So expect to have to feed your owl several times a day on whole prey items like birds and rodents. Small owls like this in the wild, they're eating basically everything they can catch. They're eating insects, they're eating rodents, they're eating reptiles, they're eating birds. They're very opportunistic little hunters, and that's cool. So a broad diversity of largely vertebrate prey is probably what's going to be best for your owl. They've got these awesome talons and this totally bodacious beak that is hooked, and all of these things are perfectly adapted for hunting and tearing apart food. But in captivity, they do tend to get sort of overgrown, and as a result, you periodically will need to trim those nails in that beak. And as I understand it, that's no picnic, because they don't like it. So expect an occasional wrestling match with claws and, talons and beaks of prey, just trying to fight back the whole time. Sounds like fun. Something else to keep in mind is that you're going to need good places for your owl to stand all the time. If where they're standing isn't adequately clean, or as I was saying, if your perches aren't adequate, they can end up getting an infection called bumblefoot, which can actually lead to their death. So this is something you need to be extremely careful about with really any sort of bird, but especially with birds of prey. And here's something else. I told you things with endotherms are not good. One of the things is that they need to eat a lot. Every day. When they're small, multiple times a day, they can starve to death in a very short period of time, which means that you cannot leave them alone for very long at all. They need a lot of daily maintenance, not just feeding, but they need to be taken outside. But literally, if you're not there to take care of them for a day or two, you can just come back to a dead owl. And I've heard that's sub-awesome. Seems just terrible. It's terrible. Endotherms are awful because of this. Yeah. You hear me?
I heard.
He's like, you're not
That
gonna
is
leave me, are you?
sub-awesome.
Endotherms are terrible because you can kill them so
You're
quickly
sure about
they cannot
that?
be left alone. And so that's why they get that score. It's also why they get a 1 out of 5 for hardiness. To get birds of prey, you
Are
often
you
need
sure
to jump
about that,
through a
dude?
lot more hoops. And that's really a good thing because this isn't something you want to learn through trial and error. You'll kill who knows how many birds. People who keep birds of prey generally do some sort of an apprenticeship. They spend years and years preparing for their birds. And even so, even experienced falconers occasionally lose birds. And the reason for this is just there are so many things that can go wrong, and they can go wrong so quickly. They can end up breaking feathers that are still vascularized and bleed out. I mean, and this is something that can happen easily when they're being confined. And there are also various illnesses that they can get that can kill them, like bumblefoot that we already discussed, and many more. There's just all sorts of accidents that can happen. They could just crash into a wall and break the things that happen to birds sometimes. They need constant supervision. Just, in a lot of cases, multiple times a day, you need to interact with them and check on them and make sure they're okay and take care of them. The
So
thing
birds
is,
are
like, in
idiots.
some ways, having a
get it?
smaller owl is more practical because they need less space, but at the same time, they need more maintenance, more constant care. They can crash more quickly. They're more fragile. They're a nightmare. They are a nightmare when it comes to keeping them alive. They're also not easy to get, which is why for availability, we give them a score of 1 out of 5. Depending on the species of owl that you get, it is actually possible to find a breeder, though it can be very difficult to find a breeder, but it is possible to find a breeder and just buy an owl. So
Yes.
you can live the life of Harry Potter. There aren't very many breeders, and they don't produce a lot of owls. So that's going to be one difficulty. For the most part, though, you're going to need permits to keep owls, especially if they're the kinds of owls that you're going to be able to house outdoors. And to get these permits, you're going to need to be a falconer, or you're going to need to have legitimate educational purposes for it. And while these aren't ridiculously expensive, they are hugely time-consuming. They're going to take a lot of effort and a lot of, really, years. And eventually, they will fly off on you. You got it. You got it. Did you hear how quiet that was, though? For most species, though, you are going to need permits. And, like I said, those permits are very time-consuming to get. So, while they are available, it is possible. It's one of the hardest animals, at least the hardest reptiles that we've talked about, to get a hold of. Probably the hardest. A big thank you to all of you who support us on Patreon.
I decided to become a patron of Clint's Reptiles because of his vast knowledge and boundless enthusiasm. A perfect combination. I also love that he is very open about the pros and the cons of keeping the reptiles that he features in his videos.
I'm tired.
I've been keeping reptiles for decades, but I still learn a lot from Clint's videos. Clint once featured a gorgeous red-sided garter snake from Don's Garter Snakes in one of his videos, and I contacted Don, learned that he lived fairly close to me, and I was able to pick up this trio of beautiful red-sided garter snake juveniles from him at a recent expo. I think early access to Clint's videos and all the other benefits of being a patron are awesome, but honestly, I think the most important reason to become a patron is to send this message. I love what you're doing, and I want to do my part to make sure that you can keep doing it. So if that's how you feel about Clint's Reptiles, I encourage you to become a patron too. There's one more reason I have to mention. Reptiles are stinking rad!
But mostly we are just grateful for you and all the things that you make possible for us. When it comes to upfront costs, we give owls a score of 1 out of 5. Like I said, there are some breeders from which you can buy exotic owls. Those are going to be ridiculously expensive. If you want a less expensive owl, then that is possible. You're either going to have to capture one, or some people are producing captive bred native owls, but you will need those fancy permits, which don't cost a ton, but they do take a lot of time and a lot of effort. The enclosures and other equipment are really going to be what's going to be the most expensive, and that's going to vary a lot depending on the size of the owl that you get. For a big owl, you're literally going to need something the size that you would need for a good-sized monitor lizard, which are prohibitively expensive enclosures. You're going to have to build it yourself. You're going to need a room in your house, or to build a shed for it. Incredibly large. And then there's a whole lot of other equipment involved as well. The mew, which is the shed that we've already talked about, also anklets and jesses, scales to weigh them, a bath pen, a weathering perch, something called a hawk box, a fancy pants glove like this. It all kind of adds up. And don't worry, over the years where you're training to have an owl, there will be experienced people that will be able to tell you exactly where to get these things and exactly how much they cost. Right on the glove. None of these things, by the way, will be down in the description. We don't have Amazon links to any of this stuff. You're also going to need to have a large supply of frozen rodents, birds, and other feeders on hand when you get the owl. If you think you can get an owl and then order a shipment of that stuff, it'll be dead before they get there. So this is literally an upfront cost with owls. And we can give you a link to those, actually. And that is why overall we give owls the worst score we've ever given any reptile on this channel, 1.4 out of 5. They get this truly abysmal score, which is sad because, I mean, Harry Potter, he always looks so happy with his owl, right? And you just put it in a little bird cage and carry it around. But apparently that's not true. They are some of the coolest animals on the planet. I can't tell you how much I have enjoyed this experience being here with an owl, getting to look into those amazing eyes, getting to just watch its cool behavior, getting to hear that little sound it just made. This has been an amazing experience. And I am so glad this owl isn't mine. They make horrible pets. This is a terrible, terrible pet. So bad. Really, like, if you are not a wizard or ridiculously committed to having an owl, then an owl is probably one of the worst reptile pets you could possibly get. Sorry to ruin your day. As always, like and subscribe. We hope to see you real soon. You know, there are some things, like, if I got to snuggle a tiger at one time, that'd be enough, right? I don't need to get my own tiger. For the rest of my life, I could tell the story about how one time I snuggled a tiger. Yeah.
Interesting.
Is that pretty good?
Yeah. Yeah, but just like this owl. Like, it to the point that it was like unnerving. Give it your best shot. You look either high or like that's your smolder.
Both.
I'll be darned. You are amazing. And I do want to pet you. This is a terrible temptation. You are so, oh my goodness, look at those eyes. Well, this is one of the coolest things I've ever done. What a special creature. Look at those blinking eyelids. You're not real. You are hilarious.
So animatronic right now.
Oh, yes.
So weird.
I never realized how accurate all the birds were at the tiki room. It's
Fuck you. What? Level 3? Fucking kidding me? I have no idea what just happened, but I got owned. Real bad. Thank you. But I could have used him. I needed a tear. Of course, you get 2 level 3 characters. What else? Not only that, he also got all of the luck. All of it. course I had to fight against place 1. Oh, come on. Why? And I've gone down? Oh, come on.
Back this past summer, the OCG format, the OCG side of Yu-Gi-Oh! At least, ran a poll, and that poll featured a whole bunch of different archetypes, themes, and monster cards, and basically players in the OCG format at least got to vote on what they felt should be the next structure deck. Now in that poll there were a lot of different decks, and it sort of narrowed down to the top 10 and then the top 5, but it pretty much just got down to the top 2 options, and they went back and forth for several weeks, and that was Shaddolls and then Sacred Beasts. Now as you guys probably realize, because there's a Shaddol structure deck coming out in the TCG in just a few short weeks, so later on in February, that the Shaddol deck actually won that poll. But even though Shaddolls won the poll, Konami clearly wanted to sort of appease the Sacred Beast fans out there, because it was really close. Sacred Beasts were in first for a couple days, and I think that Konami just wanted to appease everyone, you know, the Shaddol players and the Sacred Beast players, so they just said, okay, whatever, we'll just do a Sacred Beast structure deck as well. Now this structure deck is only pretty recently announced for the OCG. We don't even have an announcement date for the TCG, but it definitely is coming out, and yesterday we had the very first card revealed, and it's actually sort of a take on an anime card that people have been asking for a while. So I want to take today to sort of look at this card and give my initial sort of knee-jerk reaction to it, because we really don't know what the other cards in the structure deck will look like. We don't even know when they'll be announced. I mean, this is the first card, and they did promise anime cards, so this is one of those. So because there's other cards that we don't know yet, I'm not going to judge this card too harshly, but I will give my initial sort of reaction to reading this card, and also I want to go through it because its effect has changed a little bit since the anime, so if you only know it from there, you want to know what the real effect is going to be. I know when I made the video a few weeks ago on an Altergeist Pukari that I screwed up the effect, and that's because the person that I usually go for translations messed it up, but this one is taken right from a Yu-Gi-Oh! Organization, and they're pretty much never wrong in translations, so this should be the real effect. This is a normal spell card called Dimension Fusion Destruction, which many of you may be familiar with if you like these Sacred Beasts in the anime, and it says, special summon one Phantom Fusion monster, which I'll get to in a second, from your extra deck by banishing its materials from your hand, field, and or graveyard, ignoring its summoning conditions. You take no damage from battles involving the special summon monster, which is pretty cool. And then lastly, if you control any one or multiple, I guess, of these Sacred Beast monsters, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to this card's activation. So it's sort of like Super Poly if you control one of these Sacred Beast monsters. Now, like I said, the effect is different from the anime in a couple small ways. I believe that the anime version did not have the no damage part, and also I believe that the anime version, your opponent could always just not respond to it, but in this one you have to control one of the Sacred Beast monsters. I don't actually think that effect will go through too often. I don't think that you're trying to play this card in a deck that is trying to summon the Sacred Beast, but rather just a deck that's trying to OTK with the big fusion. Now there is one issue that I want to bring up here. I sort of mentioned it when I was first reading the effect, and that is the fusion monster that you can summon, a Phantom Fusion monster. Now the problem with this, and this has happened before by the way, is that that is not really what it is supposed to say. It's just in the OCG there's different words that they use that when translated into the TCG just get put as Phantom. So this card likely cannot special summon every single Phantom Fusion monster. It likely can only summon Armatile as well as this one other card that only exists in the OCG. Now where have we seen this before? Well, you might have seen this before. A very similar thing happened with the Crystal Beast support that happened pretty recently. Not super recently, but a couple legendary duels ago, we got a bunch of Crystal Beast support, like Crystal Bomb, that's super powerful, but there was a card in that set called Ultimate Crystal Magic, and this had the same issue, because this card says if a face-up Ultimate Crystal monster, which before this in the TCG we had never heard of, monster you control leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard to place any number of Crystal Beast monsters from your graveyard face-up in your spell and trap card zone as continuous spells. So the reason this was a translation problem was that in the OCG, the Ultimate Crystal was part of the literally name for Rainbow Dragon as well as Rainbow Dark Dragon, which is what this card is supposed to work with. In the TCG though, that wasn't really how the cards were written. They never said Ultimate Crystal. So now if you look at the most recent Rainbow Dragon printing, at the very top it says this card is always treated as an Ultimate Crystal card, and the exact same thing goes for Rainbow Dark Dragon. So both of those cards in the OCG have that in their name, but in the TCG they don't. So Konami had this sort of translation issue when they actually brought that trap card into our format. Rainbow Dark Dragon actually wasn't in that set, but it still was treated that way, officially at least, if you go on the Yu-Gi-Oh database, but eventually it received a reprint in Battles of Legend Relentless Revenge, and then it was updated to now say this card is always treated as an Ultimate Crystal card. So while I don't know what they will change it to once it gets translated into the TCG sort of format, I do know that it's not supposed to summon cards like Chimera, the Flying Mythical Beast. Now you might be saying that card doesn't say Phantom Beast in the title, and you are right. However, this card, kind of similar to Rainbow Dragon, says in its effect, this card is always treated as a Phantom Beast card. So right now, if that fusion was translated verbatim, which it's not going to be, but if it was, you could summon this. Would anyone do that? I mean, probably not. This card is terrible, way worse than Armityle, obviously, just way worse than most fusion monsters, but it does matter quite a bit that it doesn't specifically summon Armityle the Chaos Phantom. I already mentioned that the OCG has another card that actually does fall under this category. I don't know if we're gonna get that in the TCG, but there's a fusion monster that takes 3 level 10 monsters, which these Sacred Beasts are, and has a sort of neat effect, I guess, but that would be a card that you could summon with this fusion spell. But more importantly, I think it is leaving room for a new fusion monster to come out using the Sacred Beasts. That'd be pretty cool, maybe like one that just takes any 2 of them or something, but I'm not really sure on that. I mean, we don't have any confirmation, but it seems like they're leaving it open for a reason. Let's spend a little bit of time talking about Armityle the Chaos Phantom and how good it might be if you could summon it with a Miracle Fusion, because this is the only card right now, at least without any other announcements, that you can summon with this fusion spell in the TCG format. Armityle the Chaos Phantom is a huge fusion monster. Well, maybe not at first glance, because it does say 0 attack, but its effect says cannot be destroyed by battle. This card gains 10,000 attack during your turn only. Please keep in mind that right now Armityle actually has a restriction. The very first effect says must first be special summoned from your extra deck by banishing the above cards you control. You do not use polymerization, but keep in mind that that fusion spell ignores these summoning requirements, so you don't have to worry about that. So the question right now, at least, as far as my initial reaction goes, is how powerful is it to actually summon this card without having to summon all 3 of these Sacred Beasts? Now, comparatively, it's a big power difference. You know, summoning this card without having to bring out the Sacred Beast is a huge difference, but that doesn't automatically make it overpowered or even competitively viable, because the Sacred Beast monsters are pretty hard bricks. You would have to find ways to get them in the graveyard, which isn't impossible, isn't super difficult, but they are bricks while in your hand. They're not really cards that you want to see, but you do want them in the graveyard to summon this giant monster and attack your opponent for a game. I'd also like to say that it is cool that you don't take damage from battles involving this card, because that means if you don't manage to OTK your opponent, they can't just attack over it for 8,000 damage, because it will go back down to 0 attack. It already can't be destroyed by battle, so while it's not the most difficult thing to get off the board, at least if your OTK fails, you're not just opening yourself up for a game with this 0 attack monster. I really don't think this new fusion spell is bad. I think it's really, really good, actually, at least relative to the other Sacred Beast support, but I think there's a bigger problem that I'm not sure people are going to notice, and that's that this new OTK style of running a Sacred Beast strategy, if that even is going to exist, because we don't really know what the extra cards are going to be, but just looking at this one card, it very clearly is supporting a very fast-paced, just mill all 3 Sacred Beasts, summon this big monster, attack for game sort of style of beating your opponent that directly conflicts with how people are running Sacred Beasts, if people are really doing that right now, because right now the way people want to play that deck, if they're trying to build it just for a fun casual strategy, they're going to be playing it with Fallen Paradise, a very powerful field spell. Fallen Paradise gives you a Pot of Greed every single turn if you control a Sacred Beast, including Armityle, which is kind of cool, and also they can't be destroyed by opponent's card effects or targeted. And you might be asking yourself, or asking me at least, well, why does that matter? This card lists Armityle, so why does it really come up here? I mean, it's still going to be played, and that is true, it is still going to be played. However, when you're building a Sacred Beast deck, you no longer, now that this fusion spell is out, at least in my mind, you're not really trying to build like a slow sort of advantage based strategy with Fallen Paradise. Now you're just trying to build a very heavy OTK focused deck, which doesn't really care about card advantage too much. And I know I'm only going off of one reveal here, but I'm just looking at this new sort of Sacred Beast deck and sort of seeing it as something where you'd want to not summon the Sacred Beast monsters,
fucking
but just put
assassin
them
on
all
my
in the graveyard so you can banish
main
them and summon
every
a
single
10,000
time?
attack Armatile.
How?
And in that case, Fallen Paradise isn't
How does
as
that
good
even
because the
happen?
draw 2 won't matter that much if you've already summoned your big boss monster. It does help that it will prevent the Armatile from being targeted or destroyed. That certainly does matter, but I was trying to build a Sacred Beast deck. I know it's just one card reveal, so we'll have to wait for the other ones. Maybe we can make more videos when those get announced, but right now, off of just this one card, if I was trying to make a deck, it wouldn't be a deck that was trying to win with advantage or win by summoning a Sacred Beast monsters. It'd just be a deck that was trying to OTK my opponent with Armatile and pretty much nothing else. Would I play Fallen Paradise? I mean, sure, but I feel like in that type of strategy, it would be more important to have starter cards to get these Sacred Beasts in the graveyard in the first place you can combo off. And I know for a lot of people playing Sacred Beast right now, maybe even some of you watching this video, you're probably playing it as a more casual strategy, and that's perfectly fine. If you want to try to build a deck that can summon all 3 Sacred Beasts for some reason, I don't really understand why, because as I've said in my past videos, they're not that good even if they are pretty cool, and when you combine multiples in the same deck, it gets pretty inconsistent because now you have all these Fiend monsters, now you have all these continuous spells and continuous trap cards, but you can draw pretty mismatched hands. But I know some of you guys watching this video, if you're playing that deck right now, it's probably what you're doing, even if it's not very competitive, and that is perfectly fine, but I'm trying to analyze this new card as in, can it actually make the deck competitively viable as like a sort of OTK based strategy around Armatile. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed today's discussion video on the very first card revealed for the Sacred Beast structure deck. I'm sure there's at least 3, maybe 4 or 5 more after this one, which will be pretty cool. Let me know in the comment section below if you want me to review the other Sacred Beast cards as they get revealed over the next coming weeks or coming months. I'll see you guys later though. Thank you so much for watching today's discussion video. Goodbye.
Cleanses the world.
What did just happen to his ult? What the fuck? Brent's ult just vanished. That was easy. Wow. That Cyan deleted me. Fuck you.
The ocean will sweep them away. I am the stone beneath your feet.
The RNG is trolling me so bad, like it always does. Come on, Bran. Do it. Come, Bran. Thank you. Wow. Just give me a fucking brand, dude. Thank you. Good wreck, dude.
Chances are you probably don't follow Uno on Facebook. I'm talking about the Uno card game, and what's been hilarious for me is that over the past couple weeks, they keep posting these photos that have official rules that they wanted to clarify. That's not necessarily funny just in general. If Konami posted a new photo every day that said, oh, you can only normal summon once per turn, you can special summon as many times as you want, people probably wouldn't freak out. But the reason people are getting mad at the Uno card game is that they're posting rules that people don't agree with. Uno, like all popular games people play with their friends and homes, things like Monopoly and Life, etc., is one of those games where people, when they play at home, are going to make up their own rules. Many of us got started on Uno just by hearing what our family told us the rules were without actually sitting down and reading the boring rulebook. I mention this because in the comment section, people are freaking out about how the Uno card game is now becoming more boring with these rules, even though they were the ones playing it wrong and these have always been around. This pertains to today's discussion because in today's video we're talking about 5 myths about old school Yu-Gi-Oh! And you don't want to be the type of people that react the same way as those Uno commenters. All the things that I'm going to talk about in today's video are supportable either by the past historical documents that we have in terms of tournament results or in the actual rulebook. And you can even go back and see that I recently opened an old rulebook in 2002, the Kaiba Starter Deck, Deck, that's the very first rulebook that the TCG had, so if it's in there, it's been in the game forever. This might suck to hear, at least some of these, because you have your own perception of what old school Yu-Gi-Oh really was like, but all these things are backed up by actual evidence, and I think that the biggest thing to remember here, just like in the case of Uno, is that just because you played Yu-Gi-Oh one way with your friends or your family doesn't mean that's how the game was supposed to be played, especially at a tournament level. And I'm not making this video to say you're wrong for changing the rules, because when I first started with Yu-Gi-Oh, we barely knew the rules at all, and even when we eventually learned them, there were still some issues that arose. However, when we're talking about older cards and we're talking about older strategies, it's important to all know what actually happened, what the rules actually were, so that we can have educated discussions about those points. For example, the life points were never ever anything less than 8,000. They weren't 2,000 like the original anime, they weren't 4,000 like the later seasons of the anime, they were always 8,000. Now this is something that I get a lot of questions about, because when I talk about cards like Magic Cylinder, I always get comments from people that say, well, this card used to be really good in old school Yu-Gi-Oh with 4,000 life points. That simply isn't the case and never has been, and I understand why it's so confusing. In the anime, the main reason that they have to have less life points is that the duels don't take longer than they're supposed to. I mean, already the duels take several episodes sometimes, so if they had 8,000 life points, you'd have to make a lot more powerful strategies that the duelists are actually using, or the games would last a lot longer, something that they probably want to avoid. In the same way that the anime had less life points so that players could actually finish the game within a reasonable amount of time, many old school Yu-Gi-Oh players when they were a kid played with less life points for similar reasons. If you only have recess or lunch break to actually sit down and play a couple games of Yu-Gi-Oh, of course you're going to want to play with less than 8,000 life points. I don't think I ever played with 2,000 life points. I think I mostly stuck to 4,000 and 8,000, but when you only have a few minutes and you want to fit in more than one game, you definitely have to lower the life points just to fit in a few more duels than you would have if they were 8,000. There also never was a situation where you didn't have to tribute for level 5 or higher monsters. This is actually something that came up when I opened that 2002 Kaiba starter deck. I had multiple comments from people saying things like, well, you don't need to complain about some of the bad level 5 monsters in the deck because I mentioned Rude Kaiser several times, and people said you didn't have to tribute for them back in the day. This is false, and what's funny about that is that in that very video, I opened the 2002 rulebook and I flipped to one of the pages just kind of randomly, and it happened to be a page that mentioned tribute summoning. Yes, from the very beginning of the Yu-Gi-Oh card game, I know the anime didn't follow this rule, but level 5 and 6 monsters required 1 tribute and level 7 and 8 monsters required 2. This has always been in the game. However, just because we didn't follow the rules back in the day doesn't mean that they weren't in place, especially at tournaments. This means then that cards like Rude Kaiser and Sword Stalker simply are so terrible, and that makes sense because you don't think that Konami would print a starter deck full of really weak lower level monsters and then include some normal summonable monsters with 2,000 attack. That just doesn't make sense. Konami didn't balance things like that back in the day. Things were balanced more so around tributes than they are in new school Yu-Gi-Oh! That was the main way that Konami was saying, okay, if you want to summon these big monsters, you have to use something like polymerization or actually set up enough tributes to summon them in the first place. The last incorrect ruling that I want to directly take from people watching the anime and then thinking that's how the game works is face-up defense position. Now, of course, if you special summon something with something like Monster Born, you can summon it in defense mode. That's perfectly fine. What I'm talking about is that even to this day, there are people that think back in old school Yu-Gi-Oh! When the game first came out that you could summon monsters in face-up defense mode. This isn't true. It never has been true. You've always had to set monsters. I don't know exactly the reason that they didn't let you do that in the anime. I know at some points in the anime they did actually let players do that, but I think for a while it was just better for the viewer experience to see a monster being summoned in defense mode so you could see the artwork and see the monster come to life. I don't know the exact reasoning, more so than like the other two where I actually felt like I had a pretty good idea of why they were changed when they went to the TCG, but as far as looking at the anime, cards for the most part were able to be normal summoned in defense mode. With the TCG though, that's never been the case. You've always had to set them in face down defense position. This makes sense because many of the early effect monsters actually were flip effects, implying that you can set them face down. But I don't only want to spend this video talking about anime rulings that weren't true when they came to the TCG, so let's talk about more of a card analysis. The Egyptian God cards not only didn't exist in old school Yu-Gi-Oh!, they also weren't good when they came out. Those are two very common complaints that I see on my Why Nobody Plays the Egyptian God Cards video, and while I'm not showing any comments in today's video, I just want it to be known here that I get a ton of people that say things like, well, you're just evaluating these cards with modern techniques when these used to be very good back in the day. First off, the very first legal release of any of the God cards was in 2010, and just so we're clear here, the one that you're seeing on the screen right now is not that original 2010 version. That version, like the original 2011 and 2012 copies of Ra and Slifer, all had alternate artworks, and that was the original release. We wouldn't actually see all three of the God cards in the same exact set until Battle Pack 2 a couple years later. However, even in 2010 and 11 and 12, when they were first coming out, they weren't seen as competitively viable options and weren't really featured in any top strategies. But where does this stem from? Well, it comes from two different areas. First off, in the anime, and like I said, I'm not talking about an anime ruling, but in the anime, the God cards are hyped up as some of the best monsters in the game, and some, I think they actually say that they're not even monster cards, they're God cards. They're one step higher than monsters, and while that isn't true, I think a lot of people heard that and then applied it to when they thought of the God cards back in old school Yu-Gi-Oh! I think people remember though that they were in old school Yu-Gi-Oh! Because if you just heard me, I said that the legal versions didn't start coming out until 2010 through 2012. However, the illegal versions, the versions that you can't use in any tournament setting and can only use casually because, spoiler alert, they're not legal and don't have any real effect text, those things have been out for a very, very long time, and many people, including myself, had copies of those unplayable versions of the God cards that we then used on the schoolyard to beat our friends. I remember specifically that I bought an obelisk from eBay that, looking back, definitely was a fake version of the card, and still I played it in my deck. I thought it was really, really cool. I didn't notice the difference. However, just because you played the illegal versions of those cards back when you were a kid doesn't mean that they were powerful, because yeah, you couldn't even use them in a tournament setting. And I realize that many people watching this video, including myself, are going to say things like, well, I wasn't going to tournaments back in the day, so I don't care how good a card was in tournament setting, I only care about how good they were against my friends. The problem is that that's like comparing playing backyard football with your friends to what actually makes a competitively viable football strategy when you go into the NFL. You just can't compare the two things, because in one case people aren't taking it seriously, and in one case people are taking it seriously. So when we look at things like the Egyptian God cards and we say, well, were these cards good in old school Yu-Gi-Oh? The answer is sort of twofold. First off, it didn't even exist in old school Yu-Gi-Oh, but also when they eventually came out as legal playable copies, they still weren't very competitive even by 10 years ago standards. And we're gonna take that example of the God cards and then apply it in a broader sense for the final entry in today's video. The most common myth with old school Yu-Gi-Oh is that there wasn't a meta game. There weren't meta strategies, and that every single card and every single deck was viable to an extent. This is simply not true and never has been true, and it's one of the most common complaints that I see from ex-Yu-Gi-Oh players about new school Yu-Gi-Oh. It is true that archetypes and themes are more popular in 2019 than they were 20 years ago. However, that's not what meta means. That's not what a metagame refers to. A metagame only refers to if there's one standard deck that's topping more than the other decks out there. Sometimes it's one deck that's overpowering all of the other ones. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 or 4. Those are going to be considered the meta strategies of the time period, of the format. When we look at old school Yu-Gi-Oh, when you look at the first couple World Championships and the Shonen Jump Championships, you're going to see a pattern where, while it is true that archetypes are not dominating those tournaments because they don't exist nearly in the same capacity that we think of them these days, you see the same types of deck pop up over and over and over again, and that's exactly what a metagame is. Where this comes from is very clear to me, at least, is that it comes from people who only played Yu-Gi-Oh with their friends super casually, and they didn't pay attention to the meta. They didn't even know it existed. In some cases, like myself, I didn't even know that Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments to a large capacity even were out there. I thought that it only went to a local level. I never thought that there'd be hundreds of players building decks that are worth thousands of dollars, even back in 2005, 2006. But that was happening. Just because I didn't know it was happening doesn't mean that it didn't happen, and that's where a lot of people have a lot of confusion when looking at old school Yu-Gi-Oh! Just because you weren't going to tournaments, just because you didn't know what the meta was, doesn't mean that those things didn't exist. And that is something that I see a ton of people leave comments about, because here's the deal. The good news is that even though people back in the day maybe didn't play as many archetypes, you can still play whatever casual deck you want to with your friends, just like you could 20 years ago. You can change the rules, you can ban the latest cards, you can do whatever you want when you play outside of tournaments. That's one of the many awesome things about casual Yu-Gi-Oh! But don't pretend like you can't do that, and don't pretend like back in the day that's all anyone was doing. Even way back in 2003, there were still people that cared enough to go to the World Championship and play the best strategies out there. And when you go back and look at those World Championship deck lists, even the ones that weren't topping, they all look pretty similar. You have about like the same 30 cards in every single deck list, maybe even more standardized than nowadays when at least we have different decks topping. And I didn't make this video to make fun of any old school players. In fact, if you played during old school Yu-Gi-Oh! Competitively at least, you probably appreciate this video calling attention to some of the myths that people think about when they think of old school Yu-Gi-Oh! I think it's perfectly fine to play casually. I have nothing against that, and I myself didn't play with any of the real rules back in the day. I had no idea what a metagame was, or the fact that there were big tournaments. I just didn't know. I was a little kid. How was I supposed to know that? And that's fine, but then when I make videos about older cards, I can't take my experiences as a 5th grader and apply them to what was actually going on in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Back then. That's just not how this works. It's the same thing when we're talking about modern Yu-Gi-Oh! If you don't play at tournaments, if you only play casually, nothing wrong with that, but when you use those experiences and try to apply them to modern metagame discussions, well, obviously that is going to be kind of tough because you don't actually go to the tournaments where those metagames are happening. Anyway though, I probably rambled on long enough. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video about these 5 myths about old school Yu-Gi-Oh! I tried really hard to get the ones that I found the most comments about in my own comment section. Hopefully you guys can understand that I couldn't cover everything in this video, but I tried to cover the 5 most prevalent ones that I personally see. I'll see you later though. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.
Fuck this arrow.
An ally has been slain. An ally has been slain. An enemy has been slain. Your turret has been destroyed. An enemy has been slain. slain. Shut down. Your turret has been destroyed. Shut down. Enemy double kill.
One of the things you can do if you join the Patreon team is vote on a video every month to be critiqued by me. And this month, they've made an excellent choice.
People who know the Earth is flat and people who know that 9/11 isn't what they said it was are the most woke people on Earth.
That's right, everyone. It's time to get woke. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Flat Earth Friday with me, Simon Dan. Before we start today, if you'd like to vote on a video for me to check out, then please do have a look at the Patreon page. There are plenty of reward levels available there and it would be great to see more people join the team. Right, let's get on with the show. Yes, that opening clip was from Golden Probe winner Nathan Thompson. He scooped the Most Annoying Nathan prize when we did the Flat Earth Award show back in December last year. He released a video last month entitled I Don't Want to Be a Flat Earther Anymore, and I thought, surely not. So I watched it, and believe it or not, the title is somewhat misleading. So let's dive into the mind of Nathan Thompson, but I warn you, it's very, very big, but very, very empty.
How we doing, ladies and gentlemen? Give you guys a second to get in here.
Oh my days, you couldn't be more obvious if you tried. A little a pan down to reveal some beautiful flat earth bling. Tragic.
Is transmission working? So, I was thinking about it, and not only do I not want to be a flat earther anymore, I never wanted to be a flat earther.
No one does, Nathan. The problem is, they watch a video on YouTube from a guy with very little scientific understanding, and then they come away from said video thinking they've been living a lie their whole lives.
I don't know anyone who really wants to be a flat earther. I mean, it comes with so much ostracism and ridicule.
But you are a grown man that thinks the world is flat. You are 100% setting yourself up.
And then you have the job of babysitting and spoon feeding all these adults around you who don't know how to question reality or research things independently or critically think about anything. I mean, I don't want to be a flat earther, but we got some real problems, guys.
We do indeed. We've got paranoia and the Dunning-Kruger effect just for starters.
The globe has some real problems. One, nobody sober ever sees or feels the earth move, guys. So if someone could end this flat earth madness and just once, for the love of God, prove the earth moves just 1 inch, 1 foot, 1 mile progressively through space or has a rotation, I would love that. I would sincerely love that.
I have the perfect thing for you, Nathan. Stellar aberration. Consider this diagram. Notice the man on the left is standing still under the rain and the direction the rain comes from is straight up. However, The man on the right is running, so now he does not see the rain coming in from its true direction, but at an angle to that direction determined by speed. The exact same thing happens with starlight because of the speed of the Earth as it orbits the Sun. Take a look at this diagram. The motion of the Earth actually makes light appear to come at an angle 20 arc seconds ahead of its true position, depending on the time of year. This has been documented many times and is close to scientific fact that you can get. Irrefutable proof that we move.
If someone can prove bendy oceans.
Why would the oceans be bendy? The Earth is huge. The circumference is massive compared to us. So it does look flat in a local area. No need for bendy oceans.
And figure out why we can see 270 miles from Earth's surface.
Probably because you're on top of a mountain.
And someone could tell me why from a plane with an infrared camera we can see 700 to 1200 miles.
Probably because you're in a plane.
I would love to know, because I don't want to be a flat earther. I mean, nobody wants to have all their friends make fun of them, and family make fun of them, and be ridiculed in the news, and be called a cult member. Nobody wants that.
Then don't be one then, Nathan. It's not hard. Just tell yourself it was a phase and move on with your life.
I'm a flat earther because I have to, because the information is irrefutable. The preponderance of evidence can't be denied.
Oh, Nathan has clearly never seen my channel.
The Northern Star has never moved.
Our survey said.
The sailors have been using it to celestial navigate for over 1,000 years, documented. So, I mean, tell me why the North Star is always stationary, guys.
Jonathan Was Wrong knows a bit about that.
And we're spinning. Look at this. Look at this.
Actually, no, don't worry about it.
If we're on a spinning ball blasting through space 20 million miles a day, I've been doing Star Trail.
Oh no, a dark level.
Doing Star Trail videos for 3 years. That North Star has never moved.
Then congratulations, you've successfully documented Earth's rotation.
And they've been using sextants to navigate with it for 1,000 years.
1,000 years is nothing when we're talking about the history of the Earth. The North Star is very far away and exists in 3D space, so effectively is above the Earth. Coupled with the fact that the North Star will be orbiting the Milky Way with us, then you're hardly ever going to see any movement. However, if you watch my astrology video on Tuesday, you will know that precession means the Earth wobbles slightly, which effectively means that we get a different North Star over a 26,000 year cycle. Effectively, the Earth's axis is pointing at a different star.
So, guys, the definition of the word insane is the inability to perceive reality.
Ooh, awkward.
So if I'm a flat earther and every day I walk out to a reality that is a spinning ball, then I am insane.
Yes, you are.
But if I'm a flat earther and I walk out every single day to a flat stationary Earth, then that means every globe earther is insane and part of a cult, and we're right. And you know what I've noticed over the last 3 years of running the largest flat earth organization on Earth?
I wondered how long it'll take him to bring that up.
Is that globe earthers have vain religious superstitions about why things fall or why things disappear out of their perspective. They've never conducted one single experiment on the shape of the Earth. They have never, and will admit, seen or felt the Earth move. And I just talked to a structural engineer yesterday, and he told me they don't account for curvature because they don't have to. It's too small. It's negligible.
Our survey said.
This is the Verrazano Narrows Bridge. The towers are 41 millimeters further apart at the top than they are at the bottom, due to, that's right, Earth's curve. He goes on to repeat himself for a further 2 minutes, and then decides to point out how us globies can be more woke.
They have the opportunity to snap out of it, because it's not just the globe Earth that we have a serious issue with. If you're a truther, all the food that's in the grocery store is disgusting.
What? All of it? Every single thing? I have to disagree with you there.
Pink slime. Research pink slime in the meat. All the food they're feeding the food that you eat. It's insane. Everything's backwards. We are living in the last days, guys. And NASA and the world governments are busy building their army for Satan.
Finally, his true agenda is revealed.
And I'm going to quote the Fullerton Informer. If you're not following him on YouTube, make sure you go subscribe. But people who know the Earth is flat and people who know that 9/11 isn't what they said it was are the most woke people on Earth.
I'd say you're about as woke as the Sandman on double-strength sleeping pills.
My heart goes out to these cavalier globe earthers. It really does, because they're so deceived about the most basic of stuff. I mean, anyone can walk outside and prove for themselves, irrefutably, the Earth is not a spinning ball.
Thank you for your concern, Nathan, and I must admit, I like the name Cavalier Globe Earther. I'm not even joking, I'm going to steal that. Simon Dan, the original Cavalier Globe Earther. Nathan then moves on to another classic flat Earth topic, cold moonlight.
I mean, cold moonlight. Not only is moonlight cold, it's putrefying, damp, and bluish silver. The complete opposite of the sun. Sun is hot, preserving, it's how we make beef jerky. It's yellowish gold, and it's obviously dry. So, again, for the third time, the definition of the word insane is the inability to perceive reality. So, if you think sunlight is being reflected from the moon, ladies and gentlemen, that's textbook definition of the word insane.
Funny you should say that, Nathan, because I do think that sunlight reflects off the moon. Spectroscopy is a wonderful science. You can find out so much information just by looking at light emitted or reflected or absorbed. For instance, take a look at this graph. It's a graph that shows the spectra of both the sun and the moon. Damning evidence, wouldn't you say?
So, guys, I don't want to be a flat earther, but I don't want to be insane either. And so all the insults and all the ridicule and all these videos, you know, who's the dumbest Nathan, the UK Nathan or the USA Nathan?
Good question, and I saw that video. It was funny, but I'll have to say it's too difficult to call, just too difficult. Later on, Nathan decides to show us his flyers he's had made.
So, one of the ways I've decided to try and serve people is by everywhere I go, I'm handing out these flat earth flyers. 10 proofs the earth is flat, guys.
Now I noticed on a previous video of Nathan's that in the description he popped an email address and said if you want some flyers, please email me. So I did. I said this. Hi, I'd like to order some flyers please. Thanks, Dan. I thought that once he'd seen it from me that he wouldn't reply, but lo and behold, a day later, he did. The original email said it was from SMD FIFA, so maybe he didn't realise it was me. So I replied, and this time the sender said Dan the Simon. He must twig on now. That's great, thanks. How big are they? Because I have someone's car I need to just basically cover completely. Also, can I get a sticker version? Thanks, Dan. Can you believe it? He replied again, and he just said this. They're about the size of an iPhone. So desperate to give out flyers, he didn't even realise it was me. I'm sure he does now. Nathan ends the video by going to pick up some hats for his Flat Earth Facebook group. You know the one that kicks out Globe Earthers for no reason at all, even though it's called Flat Earth and Globe Earth Discussion. I am unfortunately blocked. Right, that about wraps up another Flat Earth Friday. Thank you all very much for joining me. If you enjoyed it, please do like and subscribe. I have been your ever faithful host, Simon Dan. Have yourselves a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you on Tuesday, where we'll be taking another look at the moon. See you all then.
Oh, come on.
Triple kill. An ally has been slain. Enemy double kill. An enemy has been slain. I see things clearly. Turret has been destroyed. This is not a battle. I've already won. Enemy is legendary. Enemy triple kill. Your inhibitor has been destroyed. Aced. Your turret has been destroyed.